What's up, rock stars? Today I'm going to be talking about Sankokushin 5 sacrifices and a whole bunch of boss details. So we're going to learn a lot about the bosses, how they work, kind of their stats. We're going to see a lot of their cards that you guys have not seen before. There's a lot of new stuff involved in this video. I've been working on it a while and I hope you enjoy it. As always, I'd like to start out by thanking my YouTube members and my wonderful patrons. Without their support, this channel would not be what it is today. I am soon to be upgrading my camera, and that is all thanks to them. I've upgraded my audio, all thanks to them. A lot of the content you see on this channel is thanks to them, both the quantity and quality, so a huge shout out, of course, goes to them every single video right at the start. I don't wait till the end. Thank you so much. Additionally, anybody else that's liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, following an Amazon link or the merch store link or anything like that, thank you so much. Trust me, it helps as well. But regardless of anything, whether you're doing that or not, I'm glad you're here and I hope you enjoy these details. If you are, do let me know. I'd love to know if I should cover more of this. There's a lot more to this game that I could cover, and I can obviously work with the developers for that. So if you'd like me to continue diving deep into these games like this, these upcoming ones, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Additionally, in the future, I will be having a Sankokushin versus Primal The Awakening head match, cage match video, so be on the lookout for that soon. Alright, now before we get into anything else, I just want to say that at the end I'm going to be teasing a multitude of things. We could dive into any of them. You guys just let me know. We're going to be seeing some never before seen stuff and then getting some new perspective on stuff we have seen before. So that'll be at the end of this video. For now, I'm going to talk about just the layout of it and kind of the gist of fighting him. So the layout is kind of what you see here. You have a card with some nice art and then a whole bunch of text with a whole bunch of different fields. We're going to go over all these fields, or at least most of the fields here in this video, so that by the end of this, you'll know how to read this pretty darn well. Additionally, when it comes to fighting bosses, one thing to point out, and you'll see on both sides, there's a psychology deck and an encounter deck. That's because you can both talk to your enemies and fight your enemies, or do a mix of them both. We'll kind of look into that as well. When it comes to the psychological, I'm not going to go too far into it. Just know that there's empathy, intimidation, and provocation. So those are kind of how you can appeal to the different enemies you fight. But one of the big things about Sankokushin is that you can talk your way out of a boss fight. You can actually change their attitude and their personality, or maybe their personality will interact with other stuff that it gets really in depth, and so that's kind of outside of the scope of this video, but again, that's something I could talk about in the future. Okay, so I'm just going to start kind of at the top and make my way down. So the first thing you're going to see besides the name is a whole bunch of tags and then some lore. Now those tags are actually pretty important because different synergies and effects interact with those tags. So you'll kind of have to know what you're going up against and what they are, because that kind of matters throughout the fight, both from their stuff and from your stuff. Additionally, the lore could provide, and even the tags could provide, some psychology clues. I'll talk more about the psychology and what you know and don't know in those kind of clues in a little bit. Next, up to the right, you're going to see the zones of the boss. Each boss has one to many zones, and each one actually acts kind of separately when it comes to assigning damage and wounds. So you're going to be assigning wounds to different zones of the enemy, and that controls reactions, attacks, debuffs, and more. So a lot of the stuff that you're going to be doing, it's not just, oh, I'm in the back, so I'm going to attack the back. It's I want to go there because he can't counteract that as well, or because that'll, provide a good debuff for him, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of different points involved in just the zone you're attacking. Now you're going to see a kind of blurb about how it targets stuff. This is pretty much what it says. This is pretty bog standard stuff where it's just like, hey, this is how it's going to target stuff. Now, normally you'll see target and no target. In other words, if it can find something that matches the target, it's going to do that. Otherwise, it's going to do this other action. So it's not just determining the target, it's also determining the action for it. And you'll see in a future kind of card here why that can, well, you're going to see in all of them, I guess, how different that can be and how important that is. Now, one thing to note is that any encounter card will trump this. So if you draw an encounter card and it's going to say do this target, you're going to do that target, not the default target. Next is behavior. Now, this is unique to each boss, and it determines when an attack or when an encounter card is drawn, typically. And so you can actually take advantage of that. There are times where you can kind of try and manipulate its behavior, and as long as you can do that, you can avoid encounter cards from coming. So you can kind of control the pace, or at least try to control the pace of encounter cards and how often they're hitting the board. And that's just because the behavior changes for each boss. And so as you're fighting them or interacting with them, you just need to keep that behavior in mind, because you can definitely control that. In fact, it's kind of intended that you do. It's part of the game. Next up, you have your standard attack, which again is a standard attack. They're going to be doing a lot of attacks based off of stances and locations and targets and encounter cards and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes they'll be doing a standard attack. And this kind of talks about that. Now, I'm going to break this down more, okay? But suffice it to say that there's the range, which is the first number in the upper left. And then the upper right is the minimum parry. And if you get that number, it's a perfect parry. And then on the bottom right is the damage if it hits. So first you're going to roll to see if it hits or if you parry it. And so in other words, you might have to roll 7 or higher. Now, if you roll exactly 7, you did a perfect parry, and different things happen based off that, based off of you and the enemy. But if you rolled anything above that, then you actually parry it. Otherwise, you're going to get damaged, and then you roll the damage dice. Next, you're going to see psychological defense. That's going to be different for each boss as well. It's really a multitude of things. Either it can be something that's kind of a standard, this is what happens. It can be dice, where it's kind of a counter roll against your psychology actions. So you're going to be doing psychology actions against them, and they're going to be thinking sentient beings and kind of react to it depending. So they're going to have a roll against that as well. And also note that you're going to have some psychology cards that need to be discovered. So as you discover their psychology cards, you better understand how they're going to react to different things. And so you're definitely going to want to, maybe one is easily intimidated, whereas one, if you intimidate it, it's just going to react badly. Different things can happen. Each one will react differently to different things. Even if they both like intimidation, they're going to react to intimidation differently. And again, we're going to look into that a little bit towards the end. And then, of course, you have your movement and defense, which are just kind of standard stuff. And, of course, you'll notice this psychology deck on the left and the encounter deck on the right. It's where you're going to put their two different decks. Okay, now let's actually look into some of these bosses. So first up, let's go and look at the one we've been looking at. This is Karakuri, and I'm going to butcher these names. I apologize. I can barely speak English well. Nonetheless, anything that's closely related to some other language. So, can't really do that too well. But the Karakuri, he's mechanical, he's armed, and he has shadow as tags. It says the mechanical armaments of Yamashiro, also known as Karakuri warriors, were designed by a genius engineer Inshin. Nowadays, only a few can still move. So obviously, he was created long ago and has been surviving all of this time. Maybe that'll help us determine the psychology based off the story and, of course, him and the circumstances. Okay, you see that he has a front and a back, and that his front is obviously towards the front there. He'll target the closest hero in line of sight, so he just goes to whoever's closest. If he doesn't have a target, all shadows move 7. So, a little bit about his lore, but he actually is almost like made of shadows, or like there's shadows in him, or something like that. It's kind of crazy, but there's some kind of weirdness about that when it comes to shadows. So he's going to have all these shadows as well, and he'll interact with those. His behavior is an underdeveloped conscience. So at the start of the encounter, you're going to reveal the automaton status card. So that's at the very start of encountering him. And then at the start of his act, which is essentially his phase, you're going to perform automaton. So you're going to perform whatever that status card is. So he's going to kind of be doing that thing. More, I'm assuming he just turns into robot mode, right? And instead of this thinking person that you can kind of talk to and get towards. His standard attack is a range 2. You're going to have to roll 7 or higher to parry. If you flawlessly parry, you gain a key. Otherwise, he's going to hit and he's going to push 2. And when he hits, he's going to roll a white die against you. So a white damage die, push 2. Otherwise, you've parried. Now, if he hits anything, if there's a collision, he's going to push 4. And if he has actually collisioned into a shadow, he destroys the shadow and heals 1. So he kind of soaks it up. So if again, he has like the shadow stuff in him. So if he gets knocked into a shadow, then, he's actually just going to soak it back up and heal. So that's probably not very good. Looks like he can move 6 and he defends with a 4+. And his psychological defense is he negates one psychology icon of your choice. So, I don't know exactly what those icons are or how us picking it would be beneficial, but I'm sure, again, I can get into that in the future. Let's look at another one. These are really interesting. Here's Endless Rain. Now, she's an armed human. One of the more recent, miniatures revealed here. It says, your lives are forfeit and your childish beliefs with them. I shall bestow upon you an eternal slumber. Doesn't sound very friendly. So, target, notice she doesn't have any zones. It's just her. Probably because she's just a human. Target a hero with the fewest negative modifiers. So she's going to be targeting people with negative modifiers. I wonder if she'll be adding negative modifiers. Let's find out. Her behavior is Endless Rain. She adds 1 rain token to all the revealed rain cards. Get no clue what those are. If no rain token is available, then she'll perform Casual Flood. If no rain card is revealed, then you'll draw 1 EC. Now I'm assuming EC is an encounter card. I wasn't told all things on purpose because we're kind of piecemealing this out. And so I'm making some assumptions, but I'll try and let you know if I'm making an assumption. I'm assuming EC is encounter card. Standard attack. So 7 distance. So she can just shoot far away and still a 7+ hit. If she hits, then you suffer -1 strength. So you get that negative modifier and gain the casual interference status card. God only knows what that does. If there is a collision, then the rain aura is torrential. All heroes within 3 spaces, so within 3 of the collision, are pushed 10. A hero influenced by this effect that has more than 3 negative modifiers suffers Symptom. Now, I don't know if Symptom is a placeholder there for what they're going to name it, or if that's a thing, and we'll find out, I guess. But notice that her movement is 0, and her defense is a 7+, and her psychological defense is a yellow and 2 red. So again, I don't know which die are good or bad. It normally goes white, yellow, red. At least that's what it does in Oathsworn, but it does in a lot of games like that. But her movement's kind of interesting. So let's say she stands there and snipes. I'm assuming some encounter cards have her move as well. Would be my assumption, especially if there's a possibility of collision, in which case unless maybe you're pushing her back or who knows what's going on. All right, then we have the Skull Samurai, and he's a para-casual, and he's armed, and he has Bushido. It says, weep for Yamashiro, for she is lost. Now the ruler of the underworld is calling for you. Well, okay. Target, the hero with the fewest injuries in line of sight. So he wants to definitely kill people. He wants to go in for the kill. If he has no target, then he'll perform Kokujin. What's that? Well, let's find out. His behavior is the land I loved. If there are 3+ of that symbol that we've seen a few times now in the psychology pool, perform Stoic. Otherwise, perform the behavior action described on the currently revealed posture card. Then he has a standard attack where it's an A+ parry, so a little bit harder to parry. It also hits with a red, but it's only 1 away, so it's shorter ranged. It says if he hits you, he adds 1 posture token to avoid formation Kokujin. So he adds a posture token to his Kokujin, which he then does if he has no target. If you do a flawless parry, then you convert 2 ki. Now, I don't know what the convert means there, so we'll have to find that out at some point. For collision, he pushes 1 and he removes one of those symbols from the psychology pool. Moves 9 with a 7+, and his psychology defense is a teal and a red. So, again, another very kind of interesting character. Definitely going in for the kill there. And I don't know what Kokujin does, but he seems to buff it up if he attacks, because he adds a posture token to it, which I'm assuming is good. So the more he hits, then once he has no target, he then performs that. My assumption is he attacks and then doesn't have kills the person or whatever, doesn't have a target anymore, so now he can do this one really good move, which is this Kokujin or whatever. That's what I read from that. It sounds pretty cool. Otherwise, he's actually kind of interacting with the psychology pool a little bit. He performs Stoic. I'm assuming it's some kind of like fight against what you're maybe trying to tell him. Who knows? Either way, seems cool. Let's look at another one. Okay, this is Bayako. He's a mystical beast. It says, I am the sacred beast of the West, guardian of the heavenly sovereign. At the start of the encounter, so this is a little bit different. Some will have kind of setup rules. At the start of the encounter, you'll reveal asterism cards according to the constellations that are visible during this month. A few things here. First of all, it obviously has to do with astrology and kind of the heavenly signs and whatnot, which I think is fairly thematic. The during this month thing, Sankokushin uses an actual time system, so what you do in the game takes up time. And so I'm assuming this has to do with that, where depending on when you fight him in the story, when you encounter him in the story, I guess encounter is probably a better word than fight, because you can just talk to these people too. That'll kind of change things. Target the closest hero in line of sight. Again, going to the closest. This is interesting though. No target. You're going to move towards the closest edge. Seems kind of odd that he'd be running away, but let's look into it. Behavior is a fear of mankind. So you're going to draw one PC. Assuming that's a psychology card. If Bayako is adjacent to an edge and no hero or trap is adjacent to Bayako, Bayako escapes instead. So he fears mankind. So when you encounter him, he's going to be trying to run away if he's not defending himself. So if he feels threatened, he's going to be attacking you. In other words, anybody closest. But otherwise, he's actively trying to run away. And his movement, by the way, is 10. So you're going to have to chase that guy down. Hopefully he got some ranged attacks or something. His standard attack resolves the Astrum card with the highest priority. So I'm assuming there's different priority levels of them, and so he'll kind of go through those. If there is a collision, then suffer 1 lightning damage to each guard stance and push 1. So there's going to be a push plus lightning damage, whatever lightning damage is, to each guard stance. I didn't know different guard stances could get damaged. Again, we can always look into that. And it looks like he rolls 3 teal dice. I don't know how many colored dice there are here, and defends on a 7+. Well, that was fairly interesting. That's definitely a different one. Let's look at one more. Oh! No. Well, would you look at that? Hino Kaguchi, or Kagutsuchi, or whatever. This is the most recent one they revealed, and as you can see, we're just teased by the fact that he's divine and anti-casual. But what he does, how he interacts, I don't know. He's got a baby in his stomach. He's Death Stranding that, I guess. Okay, so what this could be, I don't know. In fact, I would love to hear, based off his art, right? So based off of the whole angry maw with the baby inside and ribbons and multiple arms and whatever the heck's going on there, what do you think is his deal, right? So we have like, this kind of Bayako guy who is afraid and running away, but is otherwise mystical and kind of heavenly, right? Well, what's he? It says divine, it says anti-casual, has a baby. Don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts. I think I would just get a kick out of reading everybody's theories. You guys are super smart. And then perhaps in a future video, I can reveal what the actual one is. We can see how close we were. All right. Let's take some stuff we have seen before, though, again, some of this stuff is older. I'm sure some of the words have changed and stuff like that. In fact, on some of these, I had an old version and then they gave me the updated version. So they're actively working on this, of course. But let's go ahead and look. So this is obviously a psychology card of some kind. And again, if you're super against spoilers, well, you probably should just back the game more blindly than watching a detailed video of it. But here we are. Okay, so here it says the Karakuri hesitates for a moment as if it understands your words. Perhaps you can interact with this creature, +1 key. So in other words, just talking to it, it's like, okay, well, maybe it'll actually kind of maybe understand you. And then you could empathize with it. If you empathize, sorry, I'm saying that wrong again, your calming words have piqued its curiosity. You may invite it to approach. If you do, move it however many spaces towards you. It looks like 2 maybe. So that's kind of interesting. One of the things that they talked about in the game is that you can actually backstab these guys. So you could empathize and be like, hey, yo, dude, come here. And then he comes over and then you stab him in the back. Now he's in a better position. You knock him into something or whatever. You can totally do that. That is a legitimate strategy. You can talk sweetly to him and then attack him. Or maybe you just try to intimidate. It says the shadows escaping from the Karakuri's armor are terrified by your rage. The Karasuki suffers break 1 and loses 1 empathize. So, obviously, if you intimidate, you can't then start, making them feel nice. There's some shadows escaping and some stuff like that going on. And then 1, it says, I believe, defy. It says that Karakuri loses control. It moves 5 in a random direction. If it meets an obstacle, it suffers slam damage. I'm assuming that's collision damage now, as if pushed, and then performs automaton. In other words, it just kind of goes into robot mode. It's like, no, I don't know, robot, which is, again, I think very thematic and very cool. And this is just one card on one boss, so this gets me excited here. At the end, we have an empathize. At the bottom, it says, it seems to react almost like a frightened animal as you speak. Add whatever blank that is to this roll. So obviously there's some stuff there. Again, I don't know all the details. I don't know how up to date this is. We can go into this in a future video if you want. If you do, let me know, of course. But suffice it to say, that right there with the concept of the boss cards, I think really has my interest perked a lot. Let's look at maybe an encounter card. So this is for the Skull Dude. And it says, Guido, and I don't know exactly how to roll or how to read all of this, but if you notice, it has low guard, 2 mid guard, and a high guard. So I'm assuming it depends on what he's doing there. So for low guard, it's a low kick. So he's going to do a low kick, and if you had a low guard, there'd be +1 tension between you and him. Otherwise he hit, and then you push 1, and then he follows. So I'm assuming he pushes you back. There's nudge for a mid guard, which again is a push 1 follow on both, but notice that the dice change. So in fact, there's a nudge and an uppercut, and the uppercut is obviously a lot more damage with 1 black die. Then there's the spatial rend, which has 2 black die on a 9+, so you're parrying that. Though it says if you do have high guard, spend 3 tension and you can critical counter. Again, very interesting. Don't know exactly how that works, but sounds cool. And then of course you have your own gear as well, and this is just to kind of try and encapsulate this as best we can right now. So for instance, this character here actually has in his art the Cloak of Sanda. I'm assuming a 3 defense and a 1 defense. I don't know what the difference is there, but it says you may reduce any push you suffer by 1, so it's harder to push him. And then he has the Tengdian Tapa, which is a shield breaker upgrade, so you can spend 1 additional tension to break 2 barriers instead of 1. Again, don't know what that's involved, but it sounds super cool. Alright, now before I say goodbye, I just want to say that I have some Sankokushin. So I'm going to open this up. This will be a later video. Be on the lookout for that. I'm excited for that. Should be pretty exciting. Looks cool from what I've seen. I'll have to tell you in person what I think about it. But that'll be coming up if nothing else. But again, let me know in the comments below if there's any part of this or any other part of the game that you've heard of that you want me to talk about, and I'll see what I can do, of course. Additionally, I will be doing that versus video between Primal. They're kind of the 2 big boss battle games that are coming up. And so I just kind of wanted to put them head to head and just talk about each one and what each one might do for you or not do for you, or, so on and so forth, because they are very different games. And so hopefully that'll be informative and helpful for you guys as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative and interesting and cool. I know I certainly did. It was interesting to see Primal. It's interesting to see this, and especially how different they are, right? They're very, very different, even though conceptually they're both fighting a big bad guy. So anyway, I'm gonna let you go with that. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a wonderful freaking day, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.